Welcome to this week's little vlog. So we've been shooting some images. You've just seen one of the shoots we had with Lopke. We did some glamour, some normal stuff, nothing too crazy. And you can see in the image me using two lights. So the main light is deep octa with a grid, and then as an accent light we use a strip bank, which is 135 centimeters, 50 wide on 135, and well, yeah, with a grid attached to it, so we can control the light. So what does grid do? It just emphasizes, it bundles the light. Because my ceiling is not so high, when I use grids I can really control the light, because otherwise it would be bouncing from above and from the floor and the sideways. So that's something to keep in mind. If you got a smaller place, keep in mind to use grids. Don't forget, grids are expensive. Now, the images you've seen are almost all shot with the deep octa, and then in the end we finished it up with the only just using the grid. Now, the good thing about using this setup, so a deep octa on one side and then strip box behind her, is that you can turn the model both ways. So if you turn her towards the deep octa, you will see that she gets a lot of light on the front, and then the strip bank will act as an accent light. Now if she turns the other way, the entire scenario changes. So then the strip box will be the key light, because that will be the brightest, and the octa will just be the fill light to fill up some shadows. Now that's it about this shoot. Nothing too crazy, just two lights, and then when we measure it in a ratio of 1:1. So that means if we use the flash meter, give me a sec. So if we use the flash meter, you use the white dome to measure it. You hold it in front of the model, in front of the chin, towards the light. Then it gives you an F number, and then you can adjust the lights as needed. Now you do the same, you do it once, direction the octa, and then you do it another time, direction the strip box. If you get both on the same F number, you're using a ratio of 1:1. So they are both at the same level, not the same power to be precise, because that might be different, but you want to have the same F value, so the aperture value has to be the same on the model. So the one from the octa and the strip bank has to be, for instance, both 5.6 or f8, because then you're shooting in a 1:1, because it's the same ratio. So yeah, hope this makes any sense. And then yeah, let's jump in the next segment, because there's a little behind the scenes from a shoot we did on location, and I've got lots to tell you about that. So here we go. So as mentioned before, you've just seen a little, like really little, behind the scenes footage from the shoot we had with Svenja during the workshop we had in the Kalmthoutse Heide in Kalmthout, which is still Belgium. So we've took with us the Quadra 400, we took the Quadra AL B500 TTL. And then in regards of modifiers, we had the Maxi Spot. Now it's known as the high density output modifier or something like that from Elinchrom. So it's just like a silver, really big cone, and light goes straight through it. There's no diffusion in it, it's just hard light. But when you're shooting in really bright conditions, that's really a must, because you want to have a maximum output to be sure that you've got enough light hitting your model. Now, it was the first time we've used HSS on location. This means, simply said, normally when you shoot with strobes outside or in the studio, it doesn't matter. You're limited, depending on your camera brand, to 160, 200, 250 in regards of shutter speed. That's something that's brand dependent, unless you have a leaf shutter, but that's another story. Now, with this new technology, let's say new, you have the possibility to go up until 8,000 of a second shutter speed. This means that you have 6 full stops of change you can make in regards of the background. So that means that your background can now get darker. You open up your aperture and you make a combination of both. So the best way to get there is you first take an image from the scene you want to shoot. So you make sure that the sky is not blown out, that you have enough details in the shadows. Once that's done, you pop up the flash, you aim it to the model, you just take a picture and you see like, hey, is the model too bright or is the model too dark? You put more power in the strobe, less power in the strobe, depending on how far it is from the model. And then you just shoot and you're no longer limited to the shutter speed of 200 of a second. So you have a proper exposure for your background, so your image, and then the strobes make sure that the light on the model is perfectly lit. Now you can do this with a flash meter, as mentioned before. You just hold it under the chin of the model, you aim it towards the strobe, and then you just see how you have to change your camera in order to get that nice f-stop. So the images you've seen, or you will see at the end of this little segment, are from Svenja, and they are all taken with strobes except for one. Now, one of the participants, he had an ELB 1200 watt, and as we've noticed, once you get to a certain point that the sun is so high and so bright, you really need that power. Even if you're shooting at 2.8, you still need that power because you want to have the ambient light behind the model go pretty dark, and then you need enough power to illuminate the model. That's the one you've seen where Svenja is wearing the entire white outfit. In between there is one where she's wearing a short. That's done with just ambient light, but all the other shots are done with the deep octa. No, not the deep octa, are done with the ELB 500 and the maxi spot. With grid, without grid, that's dependent on the scene we are. So like with the tree, we first did an image from Svenja coming from the light coming from above. But the problem then is that her legs were too dark. So we removed the grid, but then the entire tree was too bright. So it's just a matter of what's your preference. Once you know what your preference is, you can adjust the light accordingly. So we've been the entire day in the Kalmthoutse Heide. The sun was shining, it was a really lovely day, nice participants, and yeah, just in general we shot almost the entire day with strobes. Just the first set we did was without. Again, keep in mind, if you're shooting with sunlight and you're there during lunchtime, so when the sun is the highest, make sure that when you're shooting without strobes, you have the model facing the light, so she's facing a bit up, so that she doesn't have those raccoon eyes, so she doesn't have shadows from her eyelashes going down on her how do we call it, cheek, because that's annoying to remove it in post, if you can even remove it in post. And the hard shadows, well, that's another story. You can remove them in post using frequency separation, but we're not gonna remove them in post because then we have to make sure that when we take the image, it's just not there. Now, again, just keep in mind to turn the model towards the light. There are 3 ways you can shoot. One is with strobes. Another one is turning the model with the back towards the sunlight, so you get a nice accent light on the model. And the third one is doing it the other way, so turning the model to the light, but then you have to make sure that the head is lifted up high enough to make sure that the eyes get enough light. Now you can also use diffusion scrims, which are like white translucent panels. You can hold them on top of the model, but then the issue becomes that you will see the shadow from the translucent part on the sand in this case. And then when you take a shot, you have the model, you have the shadow of the model, but you also have the shadow of the translucent scrim on the ground. So you're limited to only like headshots, 3/4. Now, depending on the size of your scrim, it might be okay, but when you're in a long sandy part, and you're doing that, it's not possible to block the sun entirely without having the shadows on the ground. So when shooting outside, just keep in mind to check for the shadows. Make sure that the shadows are not too hard. And yeah, just experiment with it and enjoy. So that's it for this week's little vlog. I hope you had something from it, and I'll see you again next week. Don't forget to subscribe and give me some thumbs up, some thumbs up. So thanks a lot, and see you when we see you. Ciao, ciao.